have anything to find, but they're very open. They have a lot of questions. Bell's just a very down-to-earth guy and loves to be able to, just live life and have all the students and the professors see his faith and how he works through different trials and what we're going through and be able to share all of the foundations of what we believe. And students stay, groups of them having discussions late at night because they've got all these questions and they've never had an opportunity to talk with anyone really about them before. So we can go to the next slide. The next one I think will be the entrance to the property, and that was at Christmas time. Those are all of our construction workers, and we had given them a bag of goods and staples for their family for Christmas. So we haven't had an architect that has been able to help us. We did have one that we thought was going to, and he ended up not giving us any plans after we paid him 75% of the money ahead of time, someone from a church that we knew. But all of the design has been Ed Bell trying to do that and come up with these ideas in his head too. So we have these fountains in the front and different plants. And actually it would be very exciting for you guys to go back down, everyone who was able to be there in February of 2020. The road to access the property was just dirt and full of ruts, and there's a rainy season for 6 or 7 months straight out of the year, and so all of that was just washed away, and it was hard even on a 4-wheel drive truck to get up that road to the property. So at Bell last year in August finally got all the neighbors together. Some of them are happy to cooperate, others of them don't want to at all, but he pulled them all together and got everyone for the most part to chip in money to be able to put cobblestone all the way up the entire road. And then in November, and I had written about a problematic neighbor that's right next to our property, the cement block that you see on the very far left, that separates our property from his, and he just put that wall up, actually coming out into the road to try and block us from being able to get into the property. But we were able to talk with him and finally get permission from him and a couple other neighbors to expand. When we bought the property, there was only 3 meters, so just about 3 yards. It's enough for one vehicle to pass is all, to get up to the property. But we had set our property wall back further to give the road a bigger space, to be wider. So finally he got all of the neighbors to agree to widen the road, and they would lose each of them 1.5 meters in front of their property so the road could be 6 meters. So now finally our workers were doing that in January and February. They put the whole drive up Pastor Brett is cobblestone like that. And so that's a huge night and day difference. So this is the entrance then to the property. We actually had to move the gate. It was where those fountains are right now, and then we moved it over because we had a sense, Bell had a very strong sense that this neighbor was going to do something to block us in, and with the angle when he built his wall into the road, we couldn't get a big vehicle in there. Like if we had to bring a rig in to service the well pump, then that would have been an issue. So we moved the gate, and then we can go to the next picture. I tried to kind of set it up to show you what you might see when you go into the property. So now we have a guard dog, Shepherd. He turned 1 the beginning of January probably. He was rescued. He had lived his life on a rooftop of a house. Terrible. But he's a great dog. And he's actually saving. There are some people that come sometimes in the night. And so it's good to have Rolando on the property. It's good to have a neighbor who has a family on their property. And then Shepherd, there were some people trying to steal some vegetables from a neighbor a couple of lots down from us before you would get up to ours. And Shepherd in the night, he could tell that someone was down at a different property, and he went bolting at the gate and throwing himself up on the gate, barking, and Pastor Rolando comes out and shining a light, and then these people had to stop stealing the neighbor's sweet potatoes. So Shepherd, we're very thankful for Shepherd. You can go on again. And this is Shepherd drinking from the fountain in the front. There's fish and plants there. You can go to the next slide. And there's Pastor Rolando and his wife Mayra and his daughter Angie. She turned 7 in February. And Pastor Rolando, when we met him, had a little motorcycle, and then I shared in a previous newsletter last year that he was able to, we knew someone who was selling a really good motorcycle and much bigger. He bought that. We paid for some of it up front and made payments and took it off of his salary for a year. And then in February, he was able to trade in his motorcycle, a complete even trade, for this 1992 Toyota, but it fits his family. So it's so common in so many other countries around the world to see a family of 3 or 4 or 5 riding on a motorcycle, most of them with no helmets. Often you see people carrying the helmet on their elbow, driving down the highway. So we're so thankful that Pastor Rolando and Mayra and Angie now have a car that they can drive. And so that's a huge blessing to see just our workers being able to make improvements just in their material things and physical lives. But they're such a blessing to have on the property. And my kids love playing with Angie, and Mayra can help out with cleaning the bathrooms and things on the property also. So they're there all the time, and their church is in the neighboring town. We can go to the next slide, please. And so this is the guard house, the house that we built for them to live on, and it's just there near the gate. So when you walk in the property, their house is right there. And then we can go to the next slide. I think I put that one it turned out of order, but here's the kids with some of the vegetables. And so our romaine lettuce that we picked it was a huge, huge head. When we cut off all the roots, just the lettuce itself weighed 1 pound, and it's all organic. So the products that we use, it's someone that at Bell did marital counseling for he and his wife for a couple of years, and he is an agronomist and developed all these products that are organic. And they test the soil. We have different kits to test the soil and see what nutrients our soil is rich in and what nutrients we lack for each different vegetable and fruit tree and nut tree, avocados that we grow. And we can go to the next slide. But most of the vegetables and fruits that we buy anywhere are just so void of nutrients, and they put things into them to make them grow big and look pretty and have color, but not much taste. And ours are very crispy and have really great flavor, but they're very nutrient rich, which is so good for people that are very malnourished, especially in all of the towns surrounding us. So not far from Pastor Rolando's house, then we have this little store, and Evelyn is a girl that works there in the store, and we were selling some things that the workers would use to eat, and now we have the organic products in there also. So if we go on the left there where it's mostly empty, now it's all filled with the products that we use, and we're distributing them to other people and businesses that will sell them. And so we have also just this year hired our own agronomist, and he's trying to find different farms and people that want to try these products and then use them also in their farming. And that we wanted to do something again to have some other smaller sources of income coming in and being able to put back into the retreat center to help sustain it. So we can go to the next slide and the next one. Those are the kids there at the picnic table as you come in the gate. We can go to the next one. Those are some of the products that we're distributing also of worm compost. And we can go to the next one. There's that again, the next one. And so this property does not have electricity. And we knew that before we bought it, we might be always without electricity. We knew that it would be much less of an expense if we could get electric hooked up, and we tried. And our prayer from the beginning was always, Lord, you know the future. It would be much easier and much less expensive initially if we could have electricity. And we pray that, if that's your will, it would happen. And if for some reason because of everything that we shouldn't have electricity on the property, then please don't let it to come if it's not supposed to. And we are still without electricity. And we think that that's the way it's going to remain. And so everything that we're doing is solar, and we have a small windmill that came down in one of Andy's suitcases, and we are getting another windmill. So we have solar and wind energy. But for the well that we installed then and had drilled in 2019, which is more than 620 feet deep, that has always been powered by a generator, gasoline and propane generators that we have. And as gas prices have risen so much, the end of last year and beginning of this year, we were spending between $400 to $500 a month just on gasoline to power the generator to pump water from the well. We had never wanted to take out a loan, but we were offered a loan from a bank. Loans in Guatemala are often 300% interest that you pay back. And they just take advantage of people that are so poor and don't even really know how to think through the process of what they're getting themselves into, and they sign a contract, and then they can lose everything, that little bit that they have, being enslaved to a bank with a 300% interest loan. So we got a loan for 40% interest, which is still a lot compared to what you guys know here, but for us in Guatemala, that is very low. But because we were paying $400 or $500 a month on water, which is a necessity, and we couldn't go without spending that on gasoline, and it was just likely to get higher, and as we were watering more vegetables, we were going to be using more and needing to pump more. So our loan payments each month are about half of what we were paying for water, for the gasoline every month. So in March, we bought a solar system and had it installed to power the well. So that was $10,000, which I think is in the next picture. But this then, once we got our solar system, and because we have the rainy season, which is sometimes cloudy for 5 days straight, and we're relying on solar to power the well, we're building a large 40,000 liter cistern. And so that would be maybe 11,000 gallons or so of water that the cistern here will hold. Could you go to the next picture, please? And so on the left, then, that's the cistern with the concrete on top, and we're going to line it on the inside with tile. And then this on the right is our solar panels, 8 solar panels and 8 batteries, and a very strong, powerful inverter to charge all those batteries. And if we have to, the inverter that we got, and that was just an answer to prayer too, we were not finding an inverter anywhere in Guatemala that would be big enough for the system that we needed, except for one that was $4,000 for just the inverter alone. And we were praying, and all of a sudden, the store we would buy the solar things from in Guatemala City, one of the workers, the day we were there, he contacted another store that they buy things from, and they gave it to him for what they got it for. And so we got this inverter for $1,000. But we can, if we absolutely have to, in an emergency of storms and stuff, we can hook up a smaller generator and charge our solar batteries through the generator and the inverter if there's not enough sun for so many days. But because we're building this cistern, we have already 2 other tanks that are 2,650 gallons each for water storage. So now with the 11,000, we'll have water storage for more than a week or so, or more long. And on top of that, then they're going to fill in the dirt on the right-hand side of that cistern. It's on the slope coming down after where the cabins and that slope from the cabins basically end. And they might have been doing it already this week, extend then a concrete top across the dirt after they fill it in. And that's where they're going to put the aquaponics on top of that, and then on the concrete slab that comes out from there, and build a clear roof over it for like a greenhouse type roof. We can go to, if you see behind the solar panels, there's a street light along the driveway, and that's all solar too. But we can go to the next slide. And so those then are the two cabins. The first cabin on the left that Crete did so much for, mixing the cement by hand and putting the first layer of concrete on the walls and the second layer of stucco inside and outside. And then that's the inside of the second cabin now. We did have some clear lights on the top, but there were some of them that were kind of leaking a little bit, and we tried fixing it, and in the end, Abel decided to just in both cabins cover those up. So that's what those stilt things are for in there. Just didn't want in the future to be having leaks in the cabins. This then is inside of the kitchen. This was sometime last year when they were doing the white stucco inside of the kitchen of the dining hall. We can go to the next one. And this is the kitchen now. We just need to have, they did this concrete for the countertops and for putting doors on the cabinets and drawers. We need to have those made. We don't have the funds for that yet. We have tile that we know that we've chosen that we'd like to put in the kitchen for the backsplash, and the countertop will be tile, and a floor that'll be tile, but we don't have the funds yet for that either. But we're going as we can. And then on the left picture, there's a doorway, and there's another little kitchenette on the other side of those windows outside, so that different people staying in the cabins, if somebody comes and camps, they have access to a little kitchenette also, if there's a team in it with a cook cooking in the kitchen. We also have, there's just different possibilities that we can do. We're working with some kids in Santa Maria, the school that I used to work at for so many years, that have special needs and learning disabilities, and some of them would like to study, like to be trained in baking and different things. So there's a lot of possibilities that we will be able to do with the kitchen to help people in nearby communities. This is Krista and Angie outside of the library, and so when Village Church came down in the end of September and beginning of October last year, they did the walls of this library for pastors, and that's the inside of the library. So we got the roof up late fall after they left, and so it still needs to have its final white layer of stucco. There's the building materials that we're using, and I think I didn't end up getting a picture in the presentation, but the people that came down on the team know it's a sheet kind of like the size of drywall. It's 4 feet wide and 8 feet tall, of 2-inch or 3-inch styrofoam, a dense styrofoam panel, and then it has a grid of some kind of wire, I don't know what you call it, a square wire grid, all on each side of this panel that's like the size of a piece of drywall. And so in Guatemala, with the rainy season, and it's so damp, every house that I have ever been in or lived in all the years that I've been there, just in the house that we're currently in, it has so many problems with mold, which has affected my health the whole time I've been there, and the kids. And so because the foundations are made with cement block down in the ground, and it absorbs all of the rainwater that comes, and then all of that concrete block, it just absorbs, and the water keeps seeping up higher and higher up all of your walls. And so all of the stucco then falls off, it cracks, and there's fungus, white fuzzy fungus that looks like cotton, always growing out in big patches all over your house and falling onto the floor, and not good for anyone's health. And lots of my utensils that I take out of the drawers, and cutting boards and pans, I have to wash everything before I use it because it's covered in a layer of mold in my kitchen. So there were a number of reasons why we chose the building materials that we did. We could do the foundation with cement block and concrete in the ground, and then pour this concrete slab that's thick on top, and then the building materials that we're using, we put rebar into the concrete slab, and we put this panel into it, and all the panels go and form the walls. And then we put rebar through and tie them up with wire, but then we put pure concrete on each side, and you put all of your piping and stuff in there too, and electric. But it's so much, it does not produce any mold. You can't have, the styrofoam, the thick styrofoam in the wall doesn't absorb any mold, and it stays nice and warm inside when it's cold and wet outside, and it stays cool and fresh inside when it's so hot outside, which is opposite of a concrete block house. And just much better for health and for earthquakes. We had an earthquake the morning before my birthday, so it was February 16th, and we jump out of bed at 1:30 in the morning to a 6.8 earthquake that lasts for a minute and a half. And so this material too, before we started any building and we were researching what materials we wanted to use, we would see simulations with this material, and they use it a lot in Mexico for apartments and government buildings, and they do 10-story tall buildings with this styrofoam material. And we saw in a 3-story house a simulation of a 10.0 earthquake, which is crazy, and nothing fell. Nothing of the structure was compromised. The only thing that happened was cracking in all of in the stucco, which can be replaced. But nothing was ruined in a 10.0 in that 3-story house. So because it's flexible with the styrofoam, that was another reason why we chose these materials. So for the library, with time we'll get bookshelves and then get more books to fill it. And our piano will go in there. We have a group of people, some missionaries that they are Guatemalan. They were missionaries here in the U.S. for 9 years, a family that we know, and they moved back to Guatemala. And they have a worship night on Thursday nights that they do with some other Guatemalans, and they're looking for a new place to have it. And so we've been trying. They came to the retreat center in December, and now that we have made more progress, they're going to come back, and I get back and see if they can start doing the worship nights on the property. But that inside of the library is where we're going to have our church once we get the library finished enough. And so the floors are just concrete, polished. The bathrooms have tile, but the floors of the library and the dining hall don't. And they won't, just for purposes of less money being put into the buildings with tile. But in front of the library, you see lavender plants, and we can go to the next slide. This is on the part of the back of the dining hall. The dining hall is large to have a lot of tables, and different ministries could rent it if they need to for a conference, a prayer conference, or whatever training that they need to do. And there's an upstairs balcony overlooking the volcanoes that you see in the back with the clouds in front of them. And then this herb garden that we have there. Here's the pool we put in. We took that cornstalk wall down now. These are avocado trees there. But we wanted to have a place also to have baptisms. There are all of the churches in different neighboring towns. They have to drive usually an hour away, and everyone who goes for a baptism have to pay an entrance fee to get into a place in order for somebody to be baptized. So we have a pool that we want to figure out a way that we can heat it with making solar coils and stuff that it'll heat up the water. But the pool is a nice thing to have there too. We can go to the next slide. This was at Bell and some of the guys. Pastor Rolando was in the hat there when they were making the pool last year. But because at Bell he's there all the time with the workers, and he likes to get in there and work with them too. They're always able to talk, and the workers build this bond with him and this trust, and then they can share what they're going through in life, and they feel that confidence to be able to come and talk to him, and he can disciple them also. So we've seen a lot of fruit come in that way with him just always there with all the workers, and kind of a mentorship and discipleship role with them too. We can go to the next picture. So that's the pool then. They did a fountain to recirculate the water instead of a normal pump. He used some of his ideas from aquaponics and stuff and built that kind of like a volcano. We have different volcanoes, 3 volcanoes right around us. One that we're sitting on the foot of, which is called Water, that volcano, and the one that's active that you saw in the other picture with the clouds across is Fire. And on the top of this thing is kind of like the water volcano, and then it has a red light on the top that's kind of like the fire from the lava one, the fire. And there's tables behind there to sit on. We can go to the next. And then behind the bathroom, behind the pool area then is another big area, the back area of the property. And there's bathrooms there for whoever's using the pool if they come for baptisms, if people come and want to have a tent and camp. These are the bathrooms that they'll use. And so there's 3 stalls and 2 showers and 2 sinks in the female bathroom, and 2 stalls and 2 showers and 2 sinks in the male bathroom. We can keep going to the next one. So I just wanted to show some of the flowers. I lost lots of my pictures and didn't get to put them in there. But there's the back area is just open and all landscaped, and that's what I couldn't find a picture of this morning to put in there. But lots of beautiful flowers and sunflowers, and the passion flower in the middle from a passion fruit that we have. And all of our workers are buying the limes and the passion fruit and the fruit that was already being produced. They're buying every day to eat and take home to their families. And this is part of the herbs that we have in the herb garden that's outside of the close to the library, with lavender, peppermint, spearmint, stevia, which is really good for people that are diabetic, or my son Noah, who can't have any sugar and has an anti-candida diet and very reduced in what he can eat. Stevia is the only natural sweetener that he's really supposed to be having. We have different varieties of oregano and thyme and rosemary, lemongrass, different varieties of basil, lots of different herbs, and we have cilantro, and we can go on. So this is the area where there's more crops to the right that you can't see, and then the herbs are over to the right and over on the left side too of what you can see in the picture, but that's the library behind it. You can go on. This was last year, our driveway going up the hill was always getting rutted out. Also, this is the hill inside of the property going up, and the cabins that were built are on the right, deeper on the right. But now this, I didn't get a picture in there, but this is all a concrete driveway now, so that the rain that comes down and falls off of the big roof of the large dining hall is no longer going to be ruining the driveway. So we have all this grates in there, and 4 different ones going up the driveway to catch some of the rainwater, and then this is all concrete now. So those are things that we didn't necessarily anticipate when we were thinking we could get the cabins finished sooner, that we were going to be doing the whole road up to be able to access the property, and then this long driveway inside of the property. And I think that's about it. I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah. So those are some pictures. They're lacking also, but to try and give you a little bit of an idea, I don't know what you think, Pastor Brett, if you see it. It looks like a lot has changed in the years since 2 years. Mm-hmm. Yes. And all during COVID. Yes. So for us, it's really, really a blessing and part of our ministry to be able then to provide jobs to all these workers that lost their jobs. And so we were sustaining at times 26 families during COVID when nobody had anything. And actually the place where we live is a gated community, because in Guatemala, in order to have water and in order to have electricity, if you don't live right in the middle of a town, because even on the outskirts you don't have water, you don't have electricity. So if you don't live right in the center of a town, you'd have to drill your own well, which is 625 feet deep on the volcano. And like us, we don't have we cannot get the electric hookup. And so by living in a gated community, it was developed by developers. They drilled the well, they put in electricity, and they got a wall around it also for some kind of safety. And so during COVID, there were multiple times that people in the neighboring town, which is a couple of miles in between where we live and the actual center of the town, but they had all lost their jobs. They were coming up, and there were different nights that the guards of the gated community came and knocked on our door and told us, Belle, we've got 7 armed men going around the wall by where you live, and so could your husband come and help us, because they know that he shot off some shots on the roof to try and scare him away, but with so many people having lost jobs, the situation got a little bit worse. But we don't have any problems on the property, and like I said, we have Rolando there and other neighbors, and we feel totally safe. We would like to eventually someday be able to build a small house for us in the very back part of the property and be able to live there also, and just be there to take care of it and for even more safety and stuff. But yeah, I don't know if anybody has questions. If there's anybody that would ever like to come down, either a family and do a week of service and mission trip as a family, or another trip that the church would like to plan, we'll have, beds and the cabins up and running, so anybody could come and stay in the cabins. And there's lots of work to do on our retreat center, and if anybody has other giftings and areas that they'd like to serve in, we could hook people up in that way too. But we would love to have anybody come down from Crete Church who would like to come at any time. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions. Yes. We live just behind where the retreat center is. So I was saying that we live in this gated community, and there's where the property that's long and narrow in the retreat center would naturally be inside the middle of this gated community that we live in, except that the owners of all of this farmland, when the developers were trying to buy property to build the gated community where we live, there's a couple of strips in the middle that the original farmers, who are now deceased, and their children inherited the land from them. That's who we bought from. Those original farmers, their dads, never wanted to sell the property to these developers of the gated community. And so we live very, very close. We used to be able to kind of walk through the barbed wire fence from the gated community where we live into our property. Now, last year, the gated community put a cement block wall up along the whole long end of the property and on the back part. So half of our property is enclosed now by a cement block wall that the developers where we live paid for and put in, which was very nice. And then that neighbor that's been difficult, he put in about 1/5 of the length of another side. He put in a cement block wall on his part, and so we live very, very close to it, basically. Yes. Mm-hmm. There are smaller, no, I'm not sure about like microbanking, what you mean, or to give loans. Mhm. Yeah, we've tried to help some of the students in the school that I used to work at to start a little small business, a pizza place up in Santa Maria. And we've gotten funds for them. But in terms of an organization that would just give like microloans, not one that we know of. There's one ministry that has trained people, done a course in entrepreneurship, and they've given a gift to some of the students in that course of a very small loan. One of the students at the pizza place that we got, got one of those gifts. He won at their kind of Shark Tank thing, and we bought us an oven for the pizzas with that gift that he was giving. But there aren't really good places for getting a microloan in Guatemala. No. Rolando. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. And in last year, when Pastor Rolando, when we were needing to have somebody living on the property and taking care of the property, and Pastor Rolando, we felt was, of all the people that we knew that were going to be able to really a good fit for us and someone that we could completely trust. The person that the man that he was renting that property from for the church, and that he and his wife were living on, and it was just one room that they had, and the walls of their house were made of corrugated tin. And during the rainy season, the neighbors that lived right behind the corrugated tin that they had of their wall of their bedroom, which they cooked in also, they had animals, livestock there. And so during the rainy season, all of that manure was coming through into their bedroom and kitchen through the corrugated tin during the downpours of rain. And also, the man that they were renting that property from, and Pastor Rolando, during COVID, his church got much smaller, and they weren't supposed to be having church services. He did have services, and some people came and some people didn't. But offerings stopped because most people lost their jobs. And so out of the salary that we were paying him as our head builder, he was paying to rent that property for the church and for himself. And so the congregation got smaller and smaller during that time. And during last year, then 2021, the older man that was renting to him gave the property to his daughter. And so the daughter came to Pastor Rolando and said that she's now in charge of the property, and she was doubling the rent. And so that was going to be too much of his salary that he was getting from us, that he was having to pay then. And he did it for like 5 months, and Belle tried talking to the girl also and to the father, and we were told that she was going to lower it again, and then she took it back up again to that doubled price. And then with the manure coming in and stuff, and we at the same time needed somebody that we could trust to live on the property and protect. We had for the bathrooms back by the pool, 2 toilets were stolen off of our property because we just, in that one wall was just a barbed wire fence. And so they opened it up and came in on foot and carried these 2 toilets and actually dropped one of them there by the barbed wire fence and cracked it and broke it and left it and took one of the other toilets to sell in the town. So that is something that on part of that wall we have put in a chain link fence, and we'd like to have the funds to put in chain link fence on the rest of that long part of the property. But Pastor Rolando's church then, when he moved onto our property and could no longer afford to pay that rent, we used the corrugated tin for the roof that Crete Church bought. We used that for the roof of the house that Pastor Rolando is living in. So all of those materials that you guys bought and put up, and Mike on the roof, that's now the roof of Pastor Rolando's house. So yeah, so they are meeting in different families' homes then that are still part of the church, and so they just decide, and everyone knows where they're going to for their next service. But thank you for asking about that. Do you have any other comments or questions or things that I have neglected to share that you'd like to? And one thing that Belle is really longing for is to get finished with this construction stuff and be able to just focus more of his time in studying of the Word and being able to have a lot more, extended times to pray and to disciple people and do what his heart really, the desire of his heart is, and the giftings that the Lord has given him. So he's very excited for the library to be able to get finished, and that he can use that as his study then, and be able to counsel people in there too, and move our church. And we're praying that our church numbers very much dwindled also during COVID, and we couldn't go to where we had been meeting, and so we started meeting in our house because we weren't supposed to be really gathering either. So people came to our house, but then We had someone that knew had come, and in the end, he had asked Belle to be discipling him and mentoring him, and we rented some of our land to him to do some farming, and he was helping communities with that, and that was part of his ministry. He was Guatemalan, but he, in the end, found out that he was just very, very narcissistic, and he caused some problems, and there were some people that left because of issues that they had with this person, and who left the church then also. And other families moved away. Some families moved back to the United States, and others moved 2 hours away in Guatemala because of the issues of COVID. And so right now our church is smaller too. So we're praying that once we can move onto the property, and God would bring people, we would like for people to be able to know the property. And so part of selling the vegetables and announcing it and stuff, we want people to just be able to come and see that it exists and that it's there, and see what we're doing in ways that they can get involved also. But we know the pastor that we're going to give the first cabin to for the first retreat also. That was the pastor that I had for many, many, many years, more than a decade in Santa Maria de Jesus, Pastor Carlos. Very humble man, very godly man. So we'll be excited for the retreats to be able to start too. And so after the engineering students from Dayton leave the beginning of August, then the cabins will be available for the retreats to start. Mm-hmm. So Kelsey, if there's ever a time that you guys want to come again, try to plan to come for real this time and not have anything hopefully keep you from getting there. We would love that also. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you all being here. And thank you very much, Dustin.
You know, Amy talks about this in such a way because it's so common to her, you know, in the way that she lives. But if you contrast, you know, some of the things she's talking about, I mean, I'm getting those mental pictures in my mind of what they were and what they look like. If you contrast that with the way we live here, I mean, she didn't even really. The contrast is unbelievable. When she was talking about Pastor Rolando's home, I've stood in that home, and it is. It's nothing compared to the way we live. I mean, what she was describing about his bedroom and things, it's just tin with a dirt floor. Yeah, dirt floor with tin and just wire and whatever holding it together. And it's like, you know, when I went and used their bathroom and I was astounded. I'm like, this is unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, even, and I'm from Kentucky, so I know something about outhouses. and the ones we had when we were kids are like phenomenal compared to those. So the conditions that we're talking about there are really, really bad in more of those slum areas. They live in a gated community, and one of the things that she alluded to, I mean, just about every house had bars on the windows, and there's a reason for that because of the crime. And she lives right next to the wall of the gate, and I've been in prisons here in America where I didn't go to prison, but I was visiting prisons, and that, you know, it reminds me of they're like living in a little prison facility with all these houses in it. And so the conditions there are very, very different than what they are here and the way we think of those. Pastor Rolando, just a very gracious, sweet man, just incredible, and just to be and his presence with his congregation that day was very precious. It just is. It was amazing to just to see those people and to be, to rub elbows with them. I mean, we're going to be in heaven with people like that. It's going to be cool. And but the conditions are. I'm not trying to be demeaning about them and their conditions and the way they live. Certainly, they have to live that way because they're poor, but it is very dire, and it is it's very sad when you think about it. But they're just as happy as they can be, and you can just see the love of Christ that exudes from them, and I was just humbled just to be able to be with them that day. Their church was just steel poles, like things we use for like volleyball poles. Were steel poles in the ground. It went up in a like a beam going across the poles, and then just tin on top of it. No walls. At least there wasn't walls. Not much of walls when we were there. I don't know if they ever put walls in, but it's just tin. That's all it was. The stage was dirt. They had a stage like this. It's just dirt. When we were there, we poured concrete on the stage so they could have a concrete stage. So the conditions are very dire. What they're doing there is they're trying to create a retreat center where they're able to have retreats for the people, and even training ministers and things like this, and church leaders in the region, which is very much needed. In missions, when you think about missions going forward, we used to think, well, we'll go in and do missions for the people. It's you get a whole lot more bang for your buck by getting centers like this in place, training indigenous people to do the ministry and to raise up churches. And so what this ministry is doing is trying to become a cog in the wheel of that dynamic that we hope to see going on in Guatemala. Similar things in Haiti that are going on through our presbytery. Over 100 churches have been planted in Haiti, just in what Chicago Metro Presbytery has been involved in. So this is like the new approach to doing. We're still sending missionaries, but raising up the church in indigenous groups of people is really the way to go. So there's a lot going on here. I'm amazed at how much they've been able to accomplish, and we just thank God for what He's been doing, what we've been able to be a part of as far as our mission giving here at Creek Church. So praise be to God for what He's doing in the world, and He's not just using Creek Church that way; He's using many other churches in America and around the globe to do great and marvelous things. I think there's a offering basket at the center table. So you can write the check to the church, and the church will give Amy the check or the money. So you'll have the chance to do that after. You want to say something else?
Thank you for what you shared, Pastor Brett, and brought to my mind a few things. If you need to leave, I understand, but just a few things that I didn't share also, and I appreciate what you said, Pastor Brett. But when you think of giving, if anybody. Right now, when we go back, this week Belle's going to be buying those beds, and we have to buy some kind of a closet, and the bedspreads, and the curtains, and we bought the sheets and the towels before I left, and other things. But that's on our credit card, and so we need to be able to pay that off, and the beds will have to go on there, too, for these students to stay in. If anybody wants to give for a bed, we need 3 beds right now. If anybody wants to give for the bedspreads or for the curtains for the windows in the cabins, those are very tangible things that we do need right now. We bought the shower curtains, and just everything adds up, with especially all that we're already doing, and the salaries that we're paying are over $4,000 every month for the workers on the property. So just to have things in mind that are needs right now that are immediate, that maybe you might be able to give for. It would be such a huge blessing to us. And I can tell you how we will use it. And when Ed Bell would also in the future like to be able to, because those students that I said from University of Dayton that are going to be there and they're going to be working, I mentioned in church on that biogas for the methane gas to be able to run the stove, and we'll be doing trials with that on the stove in the kitchen. And we have to arm a little kitchenette outside for the students to cook on that are going to be staying right now because we don't have the funds to finish the kitchen inside. But those are other things that we need right now. We're going to buy a 2-burner stove to put just not an oven or anything, just for the students to use. We bought something for them to use for the kitchen sink before I came here the other week. But they're going to be doing aquaponics also. They're going to be doing the biogas, and they're going to be starting the aquaponics where I showed you where we have that cistern, and then we're going to put the aquaponics part on top of that. So Ed Bell will be showing them how to put the aquaponic systems together. He would like to be able to buy a 3D printer, and he found plans online to be able to, years ago when we lived in our old house, when Krista was born, almost 9 years ago, that's when he started the aquaponics, and he did these towers that were PVC, this wide of PVC, and he opened up all these holes to have like 24 or 26 heads of lettuce in each of these PVC towers that he put together, and you can have as many as you want next to each other. And the pumps pump the water, and it drips down, and there's gravel filling these pipes, but opening those holes in the very thick PVC and getting them to mold the hole perfectly to fit a net pot in, it was such hard work that took such precision, and he was doing it all by hand. And so with the 3D printer, he found plans to print the pieces to build these towers for aquaponics. And so that would be such a blessing for him to not have to mess with opening all these holes by hand that took weeks to do, to reproduce, and to be able to put these technologies. We're training people to be able to use these technologies and have them in their homes. They can put them on top of their roof if they have a concrete roof, if they don't have space in their yard. But he wants to be able to get a 3D printer and develop that. And also in Guatemala, the public schools are still not meeting more than 1 day a week for those kids because of COVID. And so they're really still not learning anything. But he wants to have in the dining hall, at least once a week, he wants to start having a group, once the dining hall is finished, of kids that can come, and he wants to teach them computer coding. He studied a year of systems engineering before he studied marketing. So he loves technology, he builds computers, but he wants to teach these youth and kids how to do coding. And there's so much robotics as places where jobs will be going in the future, and he also wants to develop with the students, if there's time for the next 3 months from UD, the engineering students, a robot to go, and instead of wearing that plastic backpack to spray the fertilizers and stuff, the natural organic fertilizers on the plants, have a robot go around and do it. You just put the backpack on the robot and stuff. So, but he has all these ideas, and he researches so much, but those are some other things that he wants to do with kids in the communities to be able to help them in the future, because they're not getting any kind of a good education whatsoever from the school system right now. But that'll give them an edge that most people wouldn't have in computer coding and robotics. And so with the relationship with Dayton, there's different sister schools that are Catholic high schools that have come down in the past, and they want to continue to come. And we have one of those professors is coming for 3 weeks this summer also, and she teaches a robotics class in junior high here in the U.S. But those are a few different ideas that I had forgotten to share. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of need, and I'm sure that the Lord will raise the funds and bring the things He wants to come to pass. Let's stand for closing prayer. I'm sure if you've got any other questions, Amy can hang around here in the front, and you come up and ask her. I'm sure she'll be glad to talk with you. Let's pray. Father, thank you Thank you for what you're doing in Guatemala through this ministry. We pray that you would continue to advance your kingdom. Pray that you would continue to be with Amy and her family in her travels. And may you continue to bless us as your covenant people as we go our separate ways today. We love you, Lord, and we commit all this into your hands through Jesus Christ, our Lord and our Savior. And we ask it in his name. Amen. God bless you and have a wonderful, wonderful week.